Well, let's bring in the opposition's spokesman on families, Kevin Andrews. Now, he's in Adelaide this afternoon. Kevin Andrews, Andrew Wilkie says that these reforms are on track. What makes you suspect that there could be some changes looming?
The Prime Minister was asked this morning, did she remain committed to mandatory pre-commitment? And she refused to answer that question. She dodged the question. If she was in principle in favour of it, she could have said yes. If she was committed to a deal, she could have said yes. She said, I'm not going to comment. So she's dodged the question.
Isn't it possible that a compromise may be emerging, and that compromise might be this $1 maximum bet idea that is favoured by the Greens?
Well, this was bad policy in the first place. This was a political deal stitched up by Julia Gillard to get her into the lodge. There wasn't the proper policy consideration of any of these proposals, and now it's starting to unravel.
Would the opposition support a $1 maximum bet limit?
We have an inquiry at the moment through a task force which I'm chairing. I'm not going to preempt the outcome of that task force, but the question we ask is, will it work?
Surely you must be able to say whether or not you support the idea in principle. Don't you support the idea of a $1 maximum bet in principle?
The question we ask is, will it work and what are the consequences? If it simply means that people spend more time in gambling venues, gambling the same amount of money, and it doesn't work, well then we won't be inclined to commit to it.
Well, the Greens are arguing that they would support it through the Senate and they want it to, this sort of compromise to emerge in the first half of this year. Why not compromise? Perhaps this is the one idea that everybody could agree on.
The Greens have had enough dumb policy proposals over the last couple of years for us to be suspicious of anything that the Greens put up. I think this is a case where the Greens and the Independents are the tail that's wagging the Julia Gillard dog, or the Labor Party dog once again. They're running the show. It was interesting that Ms Gillard went to Hobart to see Andrew Wilkie about these matters. As I said, this was a political compromise to make sure that Julia Gillard got into the lodge. It wasn't based on well thought out good policy. We'll consider these matters in our task force, but I'm not going to preempt the outcome except to say that if it won't work, then we won't support it.
Well, when we talk about policy, I understand that one of the ideas that the opposition is interested in is improved counselling, more counselling for people who are gambling addicts, and yet experts are saying that that alone is not any sort of magic solution to this problem.
We don't believe that there is one simple silver bullet which will solve this problem like Mr Wilkie and the Greens seem to think. We've put a discussion paper out with a number of proposals. We recognise that poker machines is just one form of gambling. More and more people are using online gambling, yet that's not being addressed in any of these proposals. So rather than just have a willy-nilly approach, which Wilkie and the Greens seem to have, we're going to look at this properly, and when we've done so, we'll come out with our proposals.
The Productivity Commission report released in the middle of last year recommended that each state and territory government implement some sort of pre-commitment scheme by 2016. It did point out that there are between about 80 and 160,000 Australian adults who suffer severe problems as a result of their gambling addiction. Does the opposition accept that some sort of compulsion by a government entity, whether it's mandatory pre-commitment, whether it's a maximum $1 bet, may in fact be necessary?
Well, we accept, for example, that voluntary pre-commitment's being supported by everybody. We accept that everybody thinks that further education and counselling is a good idea, and a number of other proposals we've put in our discussion paper. But as I said, I'm not going to preempt the outcome other than say that it's got to be able to work. If it doesn't work, well then it's just bad policy.
Kevin Andrews, thank you very much for joining us this afternoon. We appreciate it.
Pleasure, Kim.